The gala was in full swing. Glittering chandeliers spilled golden light across the grand hall of one of the city's most luxurious hotels. Waiters weaved through the crowd with trays of sparkling glasses, while laughter and conversation filled the air. It was the annual charity event hosted by one of the most powerful men in the country, a CEO whose name carried weight in boardrooms and headlines alike. But despite the wealth, glamour, and attention that night, there was one corner of the room that seemed swallowed by silence. There, seated slightly apart from the others, was his daughter. She was only 10 years old, delicate in appearance, her dark hair falling neatly around her pale face. Her wheelchair seemed almost too big for her small frame. She sat quietly, her hands folded on her lap, her eyes drifting toward the floor whenever someone glanced her way. The guests noticed her, of course, but most looked away just as quickly. They whispered behind their glasses, "That's the CEO's daughter. She's paralyzed. Such a tragedy." Their words never reached her ears, but she could feel their pity. It pressed down on her like a heavy blanket, making her shrink deeper into herself. She wanted to disappear. Her father, the host of the evening, had checked on her earlier. He had bent down, kissed her head, and whispered, "Just a little longer, sweetheart. This event is important." Then he was gone again, swallowed by cameras, handshakes, and conversations about millions. She didn't blame him. This was his world, and she had learned not to demand too much of his time. So she sat alone. Across the hall, another man stood awkwardly near the edge of the crowd. He wasn't dressed in the kind of designer suits that filled the room. His jacket was neat but simple, and his shoes had seen better days. His name was Daniel. Unlike most of the men in the hall, he wasn't a businessman, nor did he belong to this glittering world. He was here by accident. Really, a friend who worked for the catering company had gotten him a last-minute ticket when one guest had canceled. Daniel was a single father. Life had not been easy since his wife passed away 3 years ago. He worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. But what kept him going was his daughter, Lily. She was 7, bright-eyed and endlessly curious, with a smile that could soften even the hardest heart. Tonight he had brought her along. He didn't want her stuck at home, and besides, she loved dressing up. Lily tugged on his sleeve now, her tiny face peeking up at him. "Daddy," she whispered, "why is that girl sitting all by herself?" Daniel followed her gaze and saw the little girl in the wheelchair. Something about the way she stared at the floor tugged at him. He could see loneliness written all over her small frame. His heart ached. "She's the CEO's daughter," someone near him whispered, as if reading his mind. "Poor thing. She hasn't been the same since the accident. She doesn't really talk to anyone." Daniel glanced back at Lily. She was already slipping her hand into his. "Can I go play with her?" she asked eagerly. He hesitated. It wasn't his place. This was a world far removed from his own, and approaching the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the country could stir questions, even suspicion. But then he looked at the girl again, the way her fingers clenched slightly on her lap, the way her eyes seemed to hold back tears. And he realized this wasn't about social rules. This was about a child who needed a friend. He bent down and whispered to Lily, "If you want to, sweetheart, go ahead. But let's be gentle, okay?" Hand in hand, they walked across the hall. Conversations dimmed as some of the guests noticed. Whispers rose, curious and judgmental, but Daniel ignored them. When they reached the girl, he crouched down so his eyes were level with hers. "Hi," he said softly. "My name's Daniel. This is my daughter, Lily. She was wondering if you'd like some company." The girl's eyes flicked up for just a moment, startled. No one had spoken to her like that all evening. She looked at Lily, who was smiling shyly, clutching a small toy rabbit in her hand. "I'd love to play with you," Lily said. "Do you like stories? I can tell you one about Mr. Bunny." For the first time in what felt like forever, the CEO's daughter felt her lips twitch upward. It wasn't a full smile yet, but it was something. Her voice was soft, fragile, but it came out. "Yes, I like stories." And just like that, something shifted. Lily climbed onto the chair next to her, chattering about her toy rabbit and all the adventures it had been on. The paralyzed girl listened, her eyes widening, her small hands slowly unclenching. Daniel stayed nearby, but he didn't push the conversation. He simply watched as Lily's warmth and innocence did what no amount of wealth, therapy, or pitying glances had managed to do. She made the CEO's daughter feel like a child again. Not the paralyzed daughter, not the CEO's tragedy, Just a girl sharing stories and laughter with a friend. Minutes turned into an hour. The two children giggled together, whispering secrets, clapping hands in a rhythm game Lily taught her. Daniel even saw her throw her head back in laughter once, and his chest tightened at the sight. It was pure, unfiltered joy. Meanwhile, across the room, the CEO finally noticed. At first, his brow furrowed. He started walking over, his imposing figure cutting through the crowd. People whispered again, "He won't like this. He's so protective of her." But when he reached the corner and saw his daughter's glowing face, he stopped. She was smiling. She hadn't smiled like that since before the accident. He felt his throat tighten, his heart stumbling in his chest. He looked at Daniel, who quickly rose to his feet, ready to apologize if he had crossed a line. But instead, the CEO extended his hand. His voice was low, unsteady. "Thank you." Daniel shook his hand, firm but humble. "All we did was sit with her. My daughter did the rest." The CEO's eyes glistened as he looked back at his little girl. "It means more than you know," he whispered. From that night onward, things began to change. The two girls became inseparable. They spent weekends together, sometimes at Daniel's modest apartment, where the CEO's daughter discovered the joy of pancakes cooked in a tiny kitchen, and sometimes at the CEO's mansion, where Lily brought laughter to halls that had long been silent. Daniel never treated her as fragile or broken. He simply saw her as a child, deserving of friendship and fun. Lily's pure heart gave her confidence, helped her open up, and reminded her that even though her legs didn't work, her smile, her laughter, and her spirit were stronger than ever. And every time the CEO watched his daughter laughing with her new friend, he remembered that one simple offer from a single dad had given him back the most precious thing in the world, his child's happiness.